Hello, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Thanks. So this is Intro to Sets. If you think you're supposed to be here, that's great. If you think you're supposed to be someplace else, stick around. It's going to be great. My name is Ashley Mitchell. I work in the the development department at Tableau, making this really awesome product. And I know that you've had a full day of sessions and talking to people, and there's a party last night, so your brains might be a little full. So this will be a little less technical than it could be otherwise. And also I know that we've got Iron Viz happening at 5:30, so I'll try to end this a few minutes early so you can, Iron Viz is happening after this. So I'll end this a little bit early so you can hit the restrooms and make your way to the room. I think it's in the same room as Keynote was this morning. So we can just start this off. Start off with an agenda. I'll start off describing what sets are, and I might as well just do that right now. Sets are just a way in Tableau to break the data you care about into two parts, an in-group and an out-group. That's really all it is. It seems pretty simple, but it's really quite powerful when you start using it with other features. And then after that, what are we going to do? I'm going to show you how to create different types of sets, because my goal for this is that for all of you to walk out of here with enough knowledge and enough context of how we do sets, that when you get back to work on Monday, you can be able to just jump in and start using sets in your own work. Then after that, I'll compare sets and filters, because they're really almost identical in a lot of ways, but there's some important differences that you should really know about. And then I'm going to give you some info about, maybe it's better to use sets in one condition or filters in another. And then after that, if you have time, I'll show you some more cool sets and leave some room at the end for questions and answers. So, like almost everybody here, I'm not from Las Vegas either. I actually grew up in a little place outside Spokane in eastern Washington, but I live in Seattle now. And it's really true what they say, that everybody in Seattle really likes coffee. There's coffee on every corner. And my very favorite coffee place is a little place called ETG. It's this little tiny spot. It was started in 1982 in what used to be the Elvis Presley fan club headquarters. And it's just this sweet, sweet little place. And it's in this great, funky neighborhood called Fremont. And one of the best things about being in Fremont is that it's only a 10 or 12 minute walk away from the Tableau headquarters. So I can just walk over there whenever I want. And the way you get there from Tableau, you head out the back door of Tableau and you're right there on the Burt Gilman bike trail. So you start heading west. You're going to cross the Fremont Brewing Company, which is a really great brewing company, but you can't stop there because this isn't a beer run, this is a coffee run. You can get there later. So you keep going on the bike trail. When you get to the Sri Chinmoy statue right on the ship canal, you're going in the right direction, so keep going. But if you see these life-size dinosaurs, as in 70-foot-long dinosaurs covered in ivy, you've gone too far. You got to back up. So you got to back up until you get to these really funky stairs that look like these frozen waterfall. So you go up those stairs, you keep walking. You're going to go underneath this 50-foot-tall Fremont rocket. Then when you run into this 16-foot-tall bronze statue of Lenin, take a hard right. And then in no time at all, you're right there at ETG, the best little coffee place in Seattle. And so what's so cool about this, it's really tiny. There's only enough room for one little cafe table and two chairs. And when you walk in, you see this incredible sight. There's this amazing chandelier up above, and all their baking supplies are piled almost to the ceiling. There's just enough room in the back for two people in their coffee gear. And then when you look up at the ceiling, you see this incredible painted ceiling. You have no idea how it got there. And then you look around, and there's this giant mirror with some weird, kind of scary clown decorations going on. And you keep looking around oh no, there's more chandeliers, there's more clowns. And my favorite drink to get there is actually a lavender mocha. I know it sounds really weird, and it really truly is, but it's all chocolatey and floral, and it's really amazing. And they make their own chocolate ganache from scratch, and they put in a little handmade marshmallow, so it looks like a little iceberg floating in a chocolate ocean. And it's one of the best things in the world. If you're ever up in Seattle, go to this place and order one, and you'll be very happy or very surprised. I think you'll be very happy. But as you know, I'm not in Seattle right now. I'm far, far away from ETG, my favorite little lavender mochas. So what do I do for coffee down here? I know for a fact there are no little independent coffee shops on the Strip. Believe me, I've looked all over the place. But who does sell coffee down in Las Vegas? Yeah, it's going to be Starbucks, right? You've probably passed 5 or 6 on your way to the convention today. That was like in this building alone. But there's so many great places to have coffee in Seattle, I don't really go to Starbucks. I do know they've got hundreds and hundreds of types of coffee. And the odds are that I'll like a small subset of those, but probably most of those will make Ashley kind of unhappy. Ashley doesn't want to be unhappy. So, and I also know that like some of the names can be really long. And if I'm going to spend 2 minutes, saying the name of my drink to the barista, like it had better be worth it. So how do I figure out which of these drinks are going to make me happy? And that's where sets and Tableau come in. So let's just jump over to Tableau real quick, and I'll show you how we do that. So this is just my open Tableau workbook right here. I was able to find all the nutritional information for Starbucks beverages online, and I have to tell you, some of it's kind of frightening. Like, it's not pretty. I'm going to try to protect you from the worst of it. There's only so much I can do, but okay, you've been warned. So over here on the left, it's a pretty simple data source. There's a dimension, which only has like a list of beverages. Then down below, I've got a lot of measures with things like caffeine and calories and sugar and fat, things like that. So to start out my analysis, I'm going to pull the beverage list into my worksheet. This gives me a really long list. Let me make that a little bit wider. I'll scroll a little bit, and there's like a lot of these different types of drinks. If I look down at the very bottom left, you can see there's 1,264 rows in this, which means there's 1,200 drinks. Like, that's way more than I'm willing to scroll through and just figure out by the name. So maybe if I add a bit more information to this, I'll be able to make my choosing a little bit easier. So I'll just double click on, let's say, caffeine and calories and maybe some sugar and fat. And let me just zoom in a little bit. You can grab these, the column headers, and make them a little bit wider. I can actually grab and move them to a different order if I want. And I can click on this little sort icon at the top. Maybe that'll help me out. And so I look at this, and nah, it's not really helping me much. There's still so much information there. But maybe if I provide a little bit of structure to this, it'll help me make my choice easier. So let me just actually give this worksheet a name, something like drink list. And I'll create a new worksheet. I'll call this one drink chart. Okay, so I try to eat healthy whenever I can, and two of the things that come to mind when I think about eating healthy are calories and sugar. So maybe that's a good place to start. I'll double click on calories, I'll double click on sugar, then I'll drag beverage list into my view. Then I'll change the shape to be a solid circle. It's a little bit easier to see. And so while this has given me some structure, it hasn't gotten me any closer to the drinks that I want to find. There's still 1,200 items to look through. But I do know a really easy way to narrow this down really quickly. But to do that, I have to come clean about something. Like just 2 minutes ago, I was talking about, oh, coffee's so yummy, yum, yum, yum. It's like, that's kind of not really that true. Because to me, coffee just kind of tastes like somebody put bark into water and boiled it up. It's kind of nasty. But what I really do love is chocolate. And I know that when you order a mocha, they'll actually put chocolate like into your coffee. And so for me, coffee's just a socially acceptable way to eat chocolate during the day. Even at breakfast, I can have one, and everybody's like, oh, they're totally cool with that. So what I'm going to do is create a set that shows me only the mochas. And the way I do that, I go up to the dimension that I care about, in this case, the beverage list, click on that little triangle there that brings up the menu, halfway down, create, and then set. I'll zoom in, and we will see what's going on. So at the top, there's a place you can type in a name, so that's kind of fun right off. Then there's 3 tabs, conditional, or general, condition, and top. We'll get to those other 2 in a minute, but for now, we'll stick with general. And I'll click on select from list. This will give me all the items in that dimension. Since I'm going to narrow this down quite a bit, I'll go ahead and click on the none button. This unchecks everything. And so I know there's lots and lots of items in here. It'd take too long for me to go through and find all the ones that say mocha and then click on those. So here's a nice little trick. This yellow area at the top is a search field. I can just click in there, type the word mocha, and it finds all my mochas. If I click all, it checks all the items in that search list. So this is kind of what I wanted. So I'll give this a name, something like mochas, zoom out, hit return. And the first thing you notice is that when you create a set, Tableau doesn't automatically apply it to your worksheet. It creates a special section down at the bottom of your data pane where it stores all the sets. And what's great about having these sets be stored is that you can use them anywhere in your workbook. I can use them on this worksheet or another worksheet. I can use them in calcs. And let me just change this divider, move it up a little bit so it's easier to see. And then I'll apply this set to my viz by dragging it onto color. And there you go. All those red items are all the mochas. Let's see what we have. We have something like a cafe mocha. That sounds pretty good. I've got, what is that? A mocha light frappuccino blended blah, blah, blah. I've got no idea what that is, but it's Vegas, so who knows? Anything's possible. And then up here, what else we have? We've got some iced white chocolate mocha, another iced white chocolate, and more white chocolate. And okay, so we have a little problem right now because I was raised to live by my values. And one of my values, and one of my most deeply held values, is that white chocolate is not chocolate. So thank you. Thank you. I feel, So what I need to do is go and edit my mocha set to get rid of all those white chocolate items. It's really easy. I go down here to mochas, click on that little white triangle, halfway up, edit set. I'll zoom in again. And I'll just do the same little trick I did before. I'll click into my search field, type in white. This finds every string that has white in the name. Flat whites, white mochas, all those. If I click none, it unchecks all of those, which is pretty good. If I scroll down a little bit, I see that I now have 112 items selected out of 1,200. That's a pretty good reduction. So let me zoom out and click OK. And we can see that now it's updated. I only have 100 items in there. That's still a lot of choices. But trying to be healthy as I am, I can't help notice a little detail down here on the bottom axis. That sugar axis goes up to 90 grams. That's a lot of sugar. Right? For those of you who aren't Canadian or scientists, that 90 grams is a little over 3 ounces. Or think of it another way, it's 22 packets of sugar. Like, that is so much sugar. I couldn't actually imagine it. So last week at work, I went to the little coffee area where we have our free coffee, and I pulled out 22 packets of sugar, and it piled in my hand. Like, wow, it was a lot. I really encourage you, next time you're waiting to be served at a restaurant, just start pulling out some sugar packets and see how many fit in your hand. Yeah, but all that to say, I need to go make another set that's based on sugar. Go back up here to beverage list, click on the triangle, create set. I'll zoom in. And then, instead of staying in general, I'll move over to condition. And creating a conditional set is really pretty easy. Just click on the by field button. And this first drop down is a list of all your measures. I can start typing in sugar, and there it is. The second drop down is a list of all your aggregations, because Tableau needs to know how you want to aggregate this data. Its default is sum, and sum is fine. So I'll keep that. And then less than or equal to, then how much sugar should we do? Well, when I was kind of preparing this talk, I learned that the maximum recommended allowance of added sugar is 30 grams a day. So maybe if we just set it to 15, that's pretty okay, right? Like, I probably don't want more than half my added sugar coming from a single drink. So I'm fine with this here. I'll give this a good name, something like sugar less than or equal to 15 grams. Zoom out, hit OK. Now to apply it, I'm just going to drag it back up onto color, and it'll replace the existing set. So this is kind of cool. Now I see all the drinks in my list that have less than 15 grams of sugar. But now when I really think about it, 15 grams is still quite a bit. That equates to about 4 packets of sugar. And I really don't usually put more than 2 packets of sugar in any drink, if I put in any at all. So what I could do is go back and edit my sugar set. But I don't really know what the final value is. Is it 10 grams? Is it 6? Is it 8? I'd have to go back and forth many times until I got to the right value. What I really want to be able to do is create a set that, instead of pointing to a single value like 15 grams, I could actually point it to like a list of numbers that I could then quickly edit. And you can actually do that in Tableau by using parameters. For those of you who haven't used parameters before, like the 25-cent definition is, a parameter is just a range of numbers, or a range of dates, or even like a list of text strings. And so what I need to do is create a set that points to a parameter instead of to a number. To do that, though, I need to make the parameter first. I'll show you how we do that. I'll start over here by clicking on my sugar pill. I didn't mean to say. I know that would come up when I was rehearsing. I was like, I can't say that, I can't say that. Okay, clicking on my sugar measure, choose create parameter. I'll zoom in here and we can see what's going on. So just to mention, even though I created this from sugar, the sugar measure, it's not really linked to it at all. I just clicked on it because that automatically populated all the items in this dialog. So it filled in this data type, integer, which is just a number, which is what we want. It set the current value to 0, which is fine for what we're doing. And it also filled in the minimum and maximum down here, so I didn't need to do that. It gave me a good name, so I'm happy with this. Zoom out, click OK. And now we have to create that set. Go up here to beverage list, create set, zoom in again. I'll go back to condition, but this time instead of doing by field, we're actually going to go all the way down here, and we're going to use a calc. I know, calc seems kind of scary. I totally get it. But this is going to be like a cute little puppy version of a calc. Like, it's really easy. You're going to love it and want to take it home. So just like before, we had sum of sugar less than or equal to 15 grams. We'll start out the same way. So the sum, and when you do a calc, Tableau kind of watching what you're doing, and it'll offer something that's relevant if it makes sense, like sum. Then I can start typing sugar, choose that. So sum of sugar less than or equal to, and then instead of typing 15 grams, I need to tell it to go look at that sugar parameter, which starts with sugar parameter. So it's that simple. The sum of sugar less than or equal to this sugar parameter. I'll go to the top, give it a name, something like sugar less than or equal to sugar parameter. Zoom out. Okay. I'll apply this onto color. I can see that the viz changed quite a bit. Now there's only a few items. That's because these are all the items that actually have 0 grams of sugar. Remember in that dialog, the current value was 0? That's where that's coming from. But now to get to the part where it's really cool and powerful and you can impress your friends, you just click on that little arrow down here on parameter and you choose show parameter control. And amazingly, up in the right-hand corner, we now have a parameter control. It consists of a 0, that current value that we just set, and a little slider control underneath it. I'll zoom out and show you how that works. So as I move that slider to the right, you can see the number above it change. When I let it put my mouse, it changes the parameter, and that in turn changes my viz. So what you see now in the viz are all the drinks with 34 or fewer grams of sugar. Likewise, I can just move it up and down or wherever I want. So these little parameters are really, really useful. And there's kind of 2 times when you're working in Tableau that these parameters are really helpful. One is if you're doing your own analysis and you want to do some really quick what-if scenarios. Like, what if I really loved sugar amazingly? Like, what if the doctor told me I couldn't have any sugar ever? And so this is just a really quick way to do what-if scenarios. The second time these parameters are really, really handy if you create a dashboard and send it out to somebody else, whether to, let's say, somebody else in your company or to like customer facing on your website. Because they can't actually get in and edit your parameters for you, by giving this slider, it puts a whole bunch of analytic power into their hands. These end users who don't have access to Tableau can actually do a lot of their own what-if scenarios by themselves. So if you send this out to somebody else, these parameters put a lot of power in their hands. So I mentioned that I usually use about, at most, maybe 2 packets of sugar, which is about 8 grams. So let me slide that down here to 8, and there I go. So that's pretty good. I've got, some drinks that aren't too sweet. But I know that a lot of these drinks aren't mochas at all. What I really want is a single set that actually does both. Gives me my mochas, or actually gives me only my mochas that have less than 8 grams of sugar. I could do that from scratch. You saw how we just did it. It's not hard. But since I already did both parts of that, I have a set that makes mochas, that finds mochas, and a set that finds drinks less than 8 grams. I can just combine 2 sets into one set, and it just works fine. So I'll show you how we do that. Go over here, I'll click on mocha, in that little triangle, and I'll choose Create Combined Set. So I should mention that after this, like in the day or 2, I'll put all these workbooks actually up onto Tableau Public. You can either look for my name, Ashley Mitchell, and find it that way, or you can look for TC19 and the name of this session, which is Introduction to Sets. So let me zoom in and we can see what's going on here. So I've got 2 drop-downs that show my measures. Mochas is already selected because that's the one that I chose when I created it. And for the second one, I'll choose sugar parameter. Then down here in the second section, this is where I tell Tableau how I want these two sets to be combined. I'll choose the second one, which is shared members in both sets, because I want the drinks that are both mochas and less than a certain amount of sugar. So I'm done for this. I'll give this a good name, like combined set low fat, fat mochas. Zoom out, okay. Now I'll move this onto color, we can see how it works. And there you go. And since it's actually linked back to that sugar parameter set, I can also change the parameter and it will update just as well. I'll move that back down to 8. So my whole point of this was to narrow down my list from this crazy 1200 number down to something more manageable. So now that I'm here with just 5, that seems like something I can actually start paying more attention to and focus on. And so there's many ways I could get rid of all those gray items on the page that are just kind of like not really useful anymore. But a really kind of quick, snazzy way, maybe it's not quick and snazzy, but I really like it. I can just take that combined set and move it up onto filters. And now, boom, like I can really focus on these 5 items. So what do I actually have here? You clapped. Okay, I'll take it. Well, what if I do it again? Okay, I'll do this all day if you keep that up. So what do I have here? I've got these 5 drinks. Let's check them out. I've got an iced skinny mocha grande. That's fine. Iced skinny mocha tall. And here I've got another skinny mocha. So I guess I'm having skinny mochas when I'm down here. But what are these 2 other items? I've got 1 pump of mocha syrup and a mocha drizzle. So, you know, as tempting as it is to walk up to the barista and hold out my hand and say, like, 1 pump of chocolate, please, I don't think I'm going to do that. And if I'm not going to do it for a pump of chocolate, I'm certainly not going to do it for a drizzle, right? So I have to get these out of my viz. I could go back and edit my sets so I can remove them, but here's a much simpler way. I can select my 2 items that I want to remove, and then when I hover over one of them, after the tooltip shows up, this little gray toolbar shows up. Let's just zoom into that. You'll see that one of the items has this little double ring set icon. When I click on that, I can see that I can create a new set for my selection. I can add it to any of my other sets, or I can remove it. In this case, I want to remove it, so I'll zoom out, and here I go. Now I'm down to just 3 items. So remember how I said I can use these sets anywhere? Let's go back to my drink list, because that has a lot more information about these drinks. And so I can just take my combined set, I can move it up here onto rows. And if I scroll up, this is a long list. There it is. I've got my 3 drinks, and I've got my information right beside it. And I can even, because it's just like, oh, I can't drag that. I need to show the parameter. When I change the parameter, it updates over here as well. And the reason for that is, just like sets, with parameters, there's only one definition for the entire workbook. Anywhere I apply it, it has the same values. If I change it in one place, it changes it everywhere in the entire workbook. So this is kind of handy. Now that I'm looking at this, I see the in and the out labels. And while those might be good enough for me, because I'm doing the analysis myself, if I'm going to expose this to other people, let's say, through a dashboard, I might want to make those a little bit more descriptive. And it's pretty easy to do that in Tableau. There's actually 2 ways, and I'll show you both. I can click on one of the labels. I can right-click or control-click, depending on if you 1 or 2 button mouse, and choose Edit Alias. That lets me rename it. So for me, these are tasty drinks. Okay. And I could do the same thing. I could do the same thing with this label, or I can just go to any of the pills that my set pills that are used in the viz. I can click on that drop-down and choose Edit Alias. And I can actually change them both here. So I'll call this one, I just double-click on out, not so tasty drinks. Click OK. And there they are, updated. When I go back to my drink chart on this page, you can see that my labels have changed there as well. So this is kind of my endpoint. This is my whole goal. Now that I see these 3 marks, I'm actually a little bit sad. I had so many marks before. I had like 1,200 choices, and now I only have 3. But psychologists have learned that there's really like 2 parts of happiness. One part is how much we have ourselves, and the other part is how much we have in relation to everyone else. So when I look at these three, I'm a little bit sad. I went from 1200 to 3. I used to have so many choices. But if I take combined set off of filters, it's like, oh, look at that. I only have 3 drinks, but look at all the high calorie, high sugar ones I'm not drinking. Like, that helps me a little bit. So let me just put this filter back up, this set back up onto the filter. So if this is my endpoint, I just want to get to these 3 little drinks in isolation. Why didn't I start with filters in the first place? So let's actually look at that. I'll create a new worksheet, name it something like drinks with filters. And then let's see, how did we do this? I started with we had calories on one axis, sugar on the other. I dragged beverage list down into here. I changed the shape to solid circle. Now this is our starting point, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago. To start off doing this entirely with a filter, I'll just drag beverage list onto filter. I'll zoom in here, and you can already see like how similar filters and sets really are. There's the same tabs at the top, general, condition, and top. They have a wildcard, but don't want to talk about that. And so the way we did it before, I select from list. I unchecked all of them by clicking on none. Then I did mocha. Yum, yes please, all of those. It's like, oh no, white chocolate? That makes Ashley sad. None of those. Okay, zoom out. There we go. Okay, if you look at these marks, these are the exact same marks that I had when I had my mocha set. Let's just see what that looks like. Go back to the drink chart. I'll take combined set off of filters, and I'll move my mocha set up onto color. So those red marks here are identical to the blue marks here. Let's go a little bit farther down this road. I'll double click on beverage list to edit it. I'll zoom in. I'll go over here to condition, and I'll type in the exact same formula we did before. Just sum, nope, not that. Sum of sugar less than or equal to sugar parameter. Looks good. So here are those 5 we had before. I can even select these 2 marks and just choose exclude. So now we got down to this exact same place. If you look at the equivalent over when we used sets, with the combined set here, I've got the same 3 marks. But look how different they are. Like this viz here tells a really different story than this. With this one, I don't know how many marks I started with. These 3 marks might be all I had. If I look down in this bottom corner, I see I only have 3 marks. So for all I know, this is all I have. It could be 3 of 3 or 3 of a million. I don't know. Now if I look at the chart, it looks like these items are kind of high. They're high on calories and high on sugar. But if I go back over here to my drink chart, when I have all this context, I see that's really not true. I've got 3 marks out of 1,200. Like that's interesting and useful information. And also I see all the things that aren't my chosen marks, and that gives me a different perspective. I see that my marks are actually quite low in the overall scale. So that's one of the big differences between sets and filters. For all they're alike, they're different in this way. When you can think of filters as a set that only shows the in group. And sets use an in and an out group. And what that gives you is that when you use sets, you actually get to see your data in context. You get to see how the part relates to the whole. And so a lot of times when you're starting an analysis and you're narrowing down the information that you think is important, it really helps to have that context. And then if I do want to actually focus in the end just on those parts that actually are in my in group, I can just drag my filter or drag my set up on the filter, and I get the exact same thing. There's one more way that's pretty subtle that I think in the right situation it will be pretty helpful. So I'll go back over here to the viz where we created with filters. If I go up to this filter in the filter card and I choose show filter, this filter shows up on the right-hand side, but even though I only have 3 marks on the page, I have all 1,200 items in this list. That's a lot. That's just how filters work. But if I go over to the drink chart that I made with sets and I choose show filter from the set, I only show items in the filter that are actually on the page itself. So imagine this. You're making a dashboard. You're giving it to the VP. You put a filter on there so that she can do her own analysis. And she starts using it, and it's like, oh, what are all these things? what do all these things do? And she selects some, and some work and some don't because they've been affected by this condition down here. So she comes back to you and she's like, hey, your dashboard's broken, and how come you didn't tell me about these marks? So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that you give her the exact same dashboard, but you use sets. And she sees 3 marks on the page, she sees 3 marks in the filter, and they all actually do something. Like, I don't know which one you want to use. I'd probably use the sets, but I don't want to bias you. So, and so that's a good reason to use sets. If you're exposing it to somebody else, they might get a little bit confused or not understand why there's so many items in a list that maybe don't do anything. So at this point, this is as far as I was going to go in this talk, as far as like getting into the nuts and bolts, because we only have an hour, but there's a lot more that you can do. I mean, so what we did right now, this is kind of like junior high wood shop, where like, I just tell you how to make like a birdhouse out of scrap wood, right? And it's really cool, and you're gonna take it home to your mom's, and you're like, that's awesome. I'm like, yeah, it is, right? And they're gonna hang it, you're gonna paint it and hang it up, and right, it's really great. But there's so much more you can actually do. And there are several talks on Thursday and Friday that actually go deeper into sets. And I'll give you a list of those at the end of this. So I'm not gonna be able to show you too much about those, but let me kind of show you what is possible. So let me just switch over to another workbook. And let me explain what we have here. I've got 3 worksheets. One of them is a zip code map of Seattle. The second one is a list of all the Starbucks stores, because I just kind of got hooked on the whole Starbucks thing. And then I have a store locator map, which is really just the addresses of the stores, but in map form. Then I put all of those onto a dashboard. Here's my zip code map. I've got the small map up above, and I've got the store list below. And what you can do with this, if I click on a zip code, the small map and the store list actually update. Let's say I go over to West Seattle, same thing. Go down here to Rainier Valley, they both update. And more than that, if I hover over any of the marks in the small map, the corresponding mark next to the store down below updates. And if I hover over any of the items in the store list, the appropriate item updates in the map. I did this with sets. I didn't do it just with sets, I used set actions. And so I'll explain how to go and do that, but first I need to go back and show you how I built these worksheets to get there. So it's pretty simple, actually. For the zip code map, I just dragged my zip code information over onto my viz, and it created a map for me. And then down here, I created a zip code set. We'll go to edit set so I can show you what's in there. It's just a list of zip codes. It's nothing fancy. And I applied that to detail right here, to this little item right there. It doesn't change how the appearance of the viz at all, but it does actually add information to it that'll be necessary for sets. Next, over on the list of stores, you can see at the top I have name and address. But what I did, I created an address set as well. And so for that, we'll go to edit set. It's just a list of all the addresses, all the Starbucks stores in Seattle. There's maybe like 120 of them. So I added that to shape and to color. So depending on what set, it'll change the shape and the color of the mark. And up here, I have the zip code set in filters, because I only want this store list to show me the stores that are in a certain zip code. Likewise, when I go over to the store locator map, again, it's really the addresses mapped onto the map, and I have the address set on shape and color, and I have the zip code set on filter, because again, I only want to show the dots on the map that correspond to that zip code. So, back over to Coffee Dashboard. We're going to jump into the set part now, I promise. So up here on Dashboard, you can go back halfway down to Actions. I'm not going to create a new one from scratch, but if you were, you would see that you can make actions for filters and highlighting, and you can go to URLs and Sheets and these other things. So I've got 2 sets here. I'll double click on zip code action, and I'll zoom in and I'll explain what's happening here. This is not the easiest to understand dialog by any stretch. So let me talk about what's going on. I've set this up so that when I select a mark on the zip code map sheet that's on the Coffee Finder dashboard, it changes the zip code set that's part of the Starbucks data source. You need this data source part because you could have multiple data sources that have a set of the same name, and Tableau get confused, and that's not good. So again, when I select a mark on the zip code map sheet on the Coffee Finder dashboard, it changes the zip code set. Let's just see that in action. I'll click OK. So if I select a mark on the zip code map, it changes the zip code set. Remember how I had zip code set on the filter for the other two, for the map and the store list? Because there's only one definition for a set across the entire workbook, when I changed it through this map, it changed it on every place else. That makes sense? So I click on a mark on the zip code map, and it changes the zip code set, which affects the other two. Go back to the dashboard, actions. I'll double click on the address set, and we'll zoom in. And this one, when I hover over a mark on the store location map or the list of stores sheet that is on the Coffee Finder dashboard, it changes the address set. Let's see how that works. So when I hover over a mark on the store map or on the list of addresses, it changes the address set. Remember, I put address set onto color and mark. So anytime I hover over a mark, it changes it. And so then it works that way. I think that's all that's all I was going to go into about sets and set actions. So you can think of set actions as a more natural way to change what's in a filter or a set or a parameter. Normally, like we just saw in the other workbook, you have to actually go to the filter on the right-hand side or to the parameter slider. But instead, using actions, I can have the user actually, in this more natural way, click what they see on the screen and then drive actions in other worksheets. It's pretty handy. Let's see, we have enough time? We have enough time. So one more thing I wanted to show you. And I'll actually switch over to a different data source. It's called Coffee Chain. I'm sorry, it's a whole coffee kind of thing. We used to use Coffee Chain a lot a couple years ago at Tableau. You don't see it anymore, but I was able to find an old copy of it. Looks like I didn't clean this up. I'm showing. So let me just hide this or delete those. So here I've got a coffee chain, a coffee store basically. And let's say I want to see all my sales. I can just double click it. I'll even show the marks. So I've got this big bar chart with all my profits, but I want to see how much each product actually makes. That's pretty easy. I can just drag product on a color, and then I get like way too many colors. It's like sending through a bag of Skittles at my screen. It's kind of gross. So it's just like, this is too much information. It's too granular. Because what I really, really want, I want to look at all my products. I just want to get the ones with the lowest profit, and kind of pull those out and see what's going on with those. And so I can do that with sets. I'll go over here to my product measure, product dimension, and choose Create Set. I'll zoom in. And this time, instead of condition, I'm going to use top. And top is really easy. I'll click on the by field. In this case, because I wanted to use my least profitable products, I'll choose bottom. Let's say I only want to see the bottom three. And sales is fine. No, actually, I said profit. So what this does, the bottom three products by profit. I'll give this a name, bottom three profit. Click OK. And so if I apply this to color now, it's given me something interesting. It's given me the top blue area. That's how much profit belongs to those three lowest profit products combined. But what I really want is to see how each of those three products contributes individually. I still want everything else to be other, like in this big gray other. I just want to see the detail here in my low profit areas. But I can't do that with just sets. To do that, I need to make a little calc. It's not going to be as cute as the other one, but it's actually going to be pretty powerful. And it will make sense. Let me zoom. I went over to the pane and I chose Create Calculated Field. I'll zoom in. I'll call this something like profit. Nope, don't want to do that. Lowest profit details. So down here, I'll do this whole little calculation, then I'll explain the different parts. It'll make sense. So if, what do we call that? The bottom three profit, that's the set, equals true, then product. Else, oh, don't need that, other, end. So what this does, it says, if bottom 3 profit equals true, means if a product is in the in group of the bottom 3 profit set, return the product. Otherwise, put it into a big bucket called other. We'll see how this works. So if I now move this calc onto color, what it gives me are 4 items. I still have that giant bucket with other. That's still this large blue area. But now each of those 3 items is actually called out separately. Instead of putting it on color, I could actually put it onto columns. Now I've got 4 columns. Let me just sort that. I've got 4 columns. I've got the 3 items I really care about in detail. But now here, for all the other parts, they're still grouped. So I've got different levels of granularity. I've got a big aggregate of 10 items in that other, and I've got individual items kind of pulled out separately. If I wanted to give them all funky, crazy colors, I could put the calculation back onto color. Or if I want to just give it 2 colors to see who's in and who's out, I can drag that set up onto color. So now I've got gray for out, that's that big group. Now the individuals have their own color. So this is one way you can actually give yourself different levels of granularity. So remember when I pulled product on there, it's like, oh, it's too much, like, that's too granular. And then when I pulled on the set, it's like, that's not granular enough. And so then I was able to actually change my level of granularity by creating that calculation. Another example with these same things. So let's say I want to look at sales over time. I'll just drag date out onto columns, and I'll set that up to be, let's see, quarters. Move sales up onto rows. I have a nice big line. Okay, but I want to see, again, I want to see how my lowest profit items are actually contributing to my bottom line. So if I were to pull product over onto color, it's like, wow, too much info. If I were to use that same profit set, so that groups the 3 lowest profit items into one group, I get this. And so when I see this, it kind of makes sense because, well, my lowest profit items down here really should probably be bringing in less money than my top items. But we have to be aware of what's actually in our viz right now because we're comparing apples and oranges. This gray line at the top, there's actually 10 products in there. Whereas on the blue line down below, there's only 3 products. So it's not really fair to compare those two. So I'm going to go up here to rows and choose, instead of sum of sales, I'll choose average. This gets us a little closer to comparing apples to apples. And still, it makes a lot of sense. I see that my lower profit items are bringing in less money on average than my more profitable items. But I know there's probably a certain amount of granularity or difference within those 3 items. That's where that calc comes in. I can pull my lowest profit detail calc onto color. Oh, don't want to rename that. And there I go. Now again, I've got 2 different levels of granularity. My other is still up there at that top greenish line. But I can see that this red line, this mint, most quarters, the profit's pretty close to average. These other 2 down below, the blue one for amaretto and the orange one for green mint, they're quite a bit lower. So just like most analysis, if you, we don't actually come up with answers, we just come up with better questions. So I can say like, well, maybe, I don't need to worry about the mint line, the red one at the top. I really need to focus on the bottom 2. So this is just one more way that you can use sets. Actually, and when you start using sets with more features like set actions or with calcs, you can actually start getting way more powerful. You thought at first like, well, okay, I've got my data in 2 groups, an in-group and an out-group. How powerful is that? It can be really powerful. And that's what those other classes on Thursday and Friday are going to help you figure out if you like those. So I see that we have like maybe 15 minutes left. I said I was going to end a little bit early, not quite this early. So, but I do, let me just move back over to our PowerPoint slide. Oh, look, it's Seattle. Oh, and I'm no longer in presentation mode. That's super fun. Okay. So there's other sets I talked about. I'll put this up again in a second. So there's let's talk about sets, there's ready, set, go, and there's sets on the beach. People really encourage me to do some little play on words like sets and sensibility, but I was stuck with intro to sets. Sorry, I wasn't clever there. So I'll put this back up in a second. There is a way that you can review this session if you like. It's on your mobile app. You can choose either the evaluations or my schedule. It'll be in there.